So this is topic 2.4 and it is focusing on research problem presentation. Professor Dr. Moses Muhumuza to deliver this topic. So in this topic, we shall basically look at how do you present a research problem. There are mainly two ways of presenting a research problem. One way, which is the most common, and that's what we shall focus on in this topic, is presenting it as a research problem statement. But also, the second way, which is not common and we shall not deal with it in this topic, is presenting it as a research question. Both ways are permissible in research. Why it is important in this case to present a research problem as a problem statement is because, unlike the research question, the research problem statement gives much more details to understand the research problem. So also, as a researcher, when you have a research problem statement, it will be much easier for you to generate one or two research questions. But the research question alone is not usually always sufficient enough to think through the research problem that you have. So that is the reason why in this topic, I'll mainly focus on a research problem presented as a research problem statement. Now, I need to first present the reasons why it is important to write a research problem as a statement. And these reasons, which I'm going to present here, are very important for you to reflect on when you have a research problem, to be able to see whether that research problem fits the reasons that I'm going to present here. Number one, a properly formulated problem statement provides a sense of direction to the research. So when someone reads your research problem statement, is the person able to see the direction of your research? Or it simply wanders and confuses someone about what you want to do? So as Arya pointed out, a very well formulated research problem statement should be precise, should be able to indicate, pin down for someone clearly what your research is all about. And therefore, a very well formulated research problem gives a sense of direction. Number two, a well-formulated research problem statement specifies the scope. When someone reads through the problem statement that you have, can a person be able to identify the scope that your research is going to cover? Or it wanders there and here and it doesn't show someone the limitations of the content scope that you're going to cover in your research. So a very well formulated research problem is able to bring out the specific scope of the research. And then number three, a very well formulated problem statement can help to clarify for whoever is interested in your research the problem. So meaning that a very well formulated problem statement brings out a specific research problem that you are going to investigate. So I continue with the reasons. Number four, the problem formulation in the form of a problem statement to some extent indicates the limitations of the research itself. When someone is able to see the scope, then also will be able to tell what the limitations are. Will be able to see which areas you are planning to cover and which ones you are not planning to cover. And also, a very well formulated research problem statement provides the assumptions. The assumptions that underpin the research also are evident in the research problem statement. The way it is phrased can be able to a very great extent tell, even if the assumptions are not declared directly, a keen reader can be able to determine that actually you have certain assumptions that are underpinning your research. Also, a very well formulated research problem in form of a problem statement includes the context of the problem. The context of the problem is very important because different problems can have different context. For example, if you are studying a problem in a rural African context, that means that context needs to be evident from the problem statement. If it is a developing world context, if it is a developed world context, if it is a rural context, if it is an urban context, if it is an informal context, if it is a formal context, if it is a highly regulated context, if it is not a regulated context. So the context under which you do that particular research can be evident from a very well formulated problem statement. And then lastly, problem statement formulation also provides insights about the economy in research. This means that through the different components of the problems as pointed out, especially the scope, the limitations, it can be able to give insights to a reader to determine whether what you are proposing to do as presented in the research problem is feasible financially, the costs that could be required to do that research can be made. So it is important to have these reasons communicated in the problem statement, directly or indirectly, depending on how you phrase your research problem statement. So there are two main ways of how you go about writing a problem statement. Remember, writing is an art. Different people come with different styles, but two main ways that I'm going to present here guide the process of constructing a problem in form of a statement. So in one instance is where the problem already is conceived, and the second instance is where the problem is not conceived but needs to be conceived, articulated, and refined in form of a problem statement through what we call systematic narrowing down. So let me start with the problem area already conceived. This happens when a problem is conceived and only needs to be developed and refined in form of a problem statement. So it means that you're already very clear about what you need to research and therefore you need to formulate. So in this case, it is important to establish the verbal and then symbolic presentation of the various parts of the problem. So as indicated previously, the problem must have, for example, an indicative of the scope. It must have the limitations. It must have the actual problem that needs to be addressed. It must also have the underlying reasons, and those different components form what we call the parts of the problem. And therefore, you can be able to use verbal or symbolic or symbols to present those different parts. But also, as you present those parts, need to show the different relationships among the parts of the problem, so that when you're presenting your problem statement, it should be able to flow to show which part is connected to which part. Okay, so for example, by declaring the problem that you are researching, then you have to accompany it with the context in which, for example, you are researching that problem, and even probably why. So by formulating your problem statement in that way, then it helps the reader to be convinced that actually you have thought through what you are trying to present. Then also, it is important to redefine again and again the problem. As you think through the problem, you'll find that as you get more information, you'll find that actually you will need to refine again and again the research problem. So when you have a research problem statement, it is something that you continue revising as you move on to the other steps of the research process. As I mentioned previously, research is a systematic process but not linear. It is actually a spiral process whereby you make forward and backward movements. So in the process of formulating your research problem based on what has already been conceived, you'll have to always again and again define and redefine the problem until it becomes very sensitive. Then I come now to the systematic narrowing down process. So as Ada mentioned, this happens when you, as a student, as a researcher, you don't have already a preconceived research problem, but you need to construct one based on a number of factors. But this looks at starting broadly and then narrowing it down systematically. So it requires asking a sequence of questions for you to be able to interrogate the thinking and especially your area of specialty. So it is important in this process of systematic narrowing down to identify a major field of interest or your area of interest or specialty. And then from the major area of specialty, then you identify the subfields. So for example, if your area of specialty is agriculture, you may specify the subfield as agribusiness. If your area of specialty, for example, is biology, you may identify the subfield as ecology. If your area of specialty is, for example, agriculture, again, you may be able to specify your area of subfield as agroecology. So within still, even if you have identified agroecology, for example, as your area of uh, specialty, you can identify a subfield which focuses, for example, on the indigenous knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge in the context of agroecology. So when you do that, it helps you to identify the theoretical or applied aspects of your field, and then you assess yourself on the familiarity of the theoretical and applied aspects. So for example, that's why it is important that when we are studying our different courses, we should be able to assess ourselves on the extent to which we understand the theoretical and also practical applications of whatever we are studying. And that's why in all the different courses and questions that we undertake, you always have to ask yourself the question that requires you to point out your familiarity about the theoretical writings, the theoretical terms, but also the application of each and every topic, each and every question that you study. So when it comes to the aspect of research, it actually helps other course units because throughout the course, the programs that you undertake, you'll find that you apply the tools that you gather from research methods. So in the process of systematic narrowing down, you'll be able to come up with an understanding of your strengths and limitations, understanding of the field, the major, and the field at the sub level, such that you can be able to assess yourself and then be able to generate a very good and convincing research problem. So this brings us to our activity 2.4. This activity still draws from the activity which we started with from 2.1, where you were asked to identify what you want to know or what you want to know more, and then through activities 2.2 and activities 2.3. So this activity requires you to rate your problem on the 7 reasons for rating a problem statement, meaning that what you identified and what you went through 2.2 to 2.3, can you be able now to identify the scope? Can you be able to identify the limitations? Can you be able to identify from what you so far have the actual problem? Can you be able to identify generally the different reasons? Are they coming out in what you have as pointed out in this topic? So that's what this activity requires you to do. You can take about 10 to 15 minutes to go through that. So this marks the end of our topic 2.4. I look forward to meeting you again in our topic 2.5.